I, 62, have one son, Mark. He is what most people would call a success. He built a tech company from the ground up and became a millionaire before he turned 30. I was always proud of his drive, but I worried about what it cost him. His ambition had a sharp edge to it, one that often cut the people closest to him. His ex-wife, Sarah, 35, knew that better than anyone. They have two beautiful children together, my grandchildren Leo and Mia. Their divorce had been brutal, a war waged by Mark with his money and his lawyers, leaving Sarah with just enough to get by, but never enough to feel secure. On Mother's Day, a sleek black car pulled up to my small, modest house. Mark stepped out, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. He smiled a smile that never quite reached his eyes. It was his corporate smile, the one he used for magazine photos and investor meetings. He handed me a small, heavy box. Inside was a single, ornate key. "Happy Mother's Day, Mom," he said, his voice smooth and practiced. "I bought you something. Something to show you how much I appreciate everything you've done for me." I looked at the key, confused. It was not a car key. It was a house key, but fancier. "Mark, what is this?" I asked. "It's your new home," he announced, beaming as if he had just solved world hunger. "A beautiful 2-bedroom condo downtown. All yours. Paid in full. No more worrying about this old house. No more climbing stairs. It's time you relaxed. Enjoy the condo I bought you." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Not a condo for you, but the condo I bought you. It was a declaration of ownership. A transaction. My heart sank a little. I had never asked for this. I loved my little house. It was filled with memories of his father, of Mark's childhood. It was mine. "Mark, this is too much," I stammered. "I can't accept this." "Nonsense," he said, waving a dismissive hand. "It's done. The deed is in your name. All you have to do is move in. I even hired movers for you. They can start next week." He was not asking. He was telling. He had planned my entire life out for me without a single conversation. That was Mark's way. He didn't collaborate, he directed. He saw people as pieces on a chessboard, and he was the only one allowed to play. I felt a familiar sense of being bulldozed, of my own feelings being irrelevant to his grand plans. He walked me through a digital photo album on his tablet, showing me pictures of a sterile, modern apartment with white walls and gray furniture. It looked like a hotel lobby, not a home. It was cold and impersonal, just like the gesture itself. "It's beautiful, honey," I said, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. I had to choose my battles with Mark carefully. A direct confrontation would lead to a storm of anger and accusations of me being ungrateful. I decided to play along for now, to understand what was really happening. There was always a reason for Mark's grand gestures, and it was rarely as simple as generosity. He hugged me stiffly, the fabric of his expensive suit rough against my cheek. "You deserve it, Mom," he said. And with that, he was gone, leaving me standing on my porch with a key to a life I didn't want, and a deep, unsettling feeling that this gift was not a gift at all. It was a cage, and I had yet to figure out where the lock was. I went inside and sat in my favorite armchair, the one with the worn fabric that molded perfectly to my shape. I looked around at my home, at the photos on the mantelpiece, the scuff marks on the floor where a little boy once raced his toy cars. A condo could never replace this. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that Mark's gift had nothing to do with my comfort and everything to do with his control. The question was, control over what? Or more accurately, over whom? The answer, I suspected, lay with Sarah and my grandchildren. A few days passed. The key sat on my kitchen counter, a silent, gleaming accusation. Mark called every day, his voice laced with an impatient sort of cheerfulness. "Have you seen the condo yet, Mom? You're going to love the view." Or, "The movers are scheduled for Monday. Have you started packing?" Each call felt like a tightening screw. He was not giving me space to think or to feel. He was managing the project of my relocation. I decided I had to see the place. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just a clumsy, albeit extravagant, attempt at showing his love. I drove downtown, my old sedan feeling out of place among the luxury cars parked near the gleaming glass tower. The concierge in the lobby looked me up and down, his expression making it clear he thought I was in the wrong place. I gave him the apartment number, and his demeanor shifted instantly. He became obsequious, calling me by name and personally escorting me to the elevator. Mark's money had already bought my identity here. The condo was on the 17th floor. It was exactly as sterile as the photos had suggested. The air smelled of fresh paint and new carpet, a chemical scent with no history. The furniture was arranged with geometric precision. It felt like no one had ever lived there and no one ever would. I walked over to the massive floor-to-ceiling window that dominated the living room. Mark had said I would love the view. And then I saw it. The view was not of the city skyline or a beautiful park. It was a direct, unobstructed view of a small neighborhood of single-family homes 2 blocks away. And right in the center of that view, perfectly framed by the window, was a familiar blue house with a large oak tree in the backyard. It was Sarah's house. I could see the swing set where Leo and Mia played. I could see the back porch where Sarah drank her morning coffee. I could see directly into her life. My blood ran cold. This was not a coincidence. This was strategic. This was a watchtower. My son had not bought me a home. He had bought himself a surveillance outpost and put my name on the deed. The feeling of being used washed over me, so strong it made me dizzy. I had to grip the back of a cold leather sofa to steady myself. All the pieces clicked into place. His sudden interest in my comfort. His insistence on this specific, expensive location. His complete disregard for my attachment to my own home. It was all a lie. A carefully constructed deception to serve his own cruel purpose. He wanted to watch her, to monitor her, to collect information that he could use against her in their never-ending custody battle. And he was going to use me, his own mother, as his accomplice. The thought was so vile, so profoundly disturbing, that I felt a wave of nausea. I looked around the empty, silent condo. The cage had a lock, and the key was in my hand. But the bars weren't for me. They were for Sarah. I was meant to be the warden. I walked out of the condo, not even bothering to lock the door behind me. I rode the elevator down, my mind racing. The concierge gave me another deferential nod, but I barely saw him. I got in my car and drove, not back to my house, but to a small coffee shop a few miles away. I needed to think, to process the sheer, calculated cruelty of my son's actions. He had wrapped this monstrous plan in the guise of a Mother's Day gift. He had tried to make me a co-conspirator in the harassment of the mother of his children. I ordered a black coffee and sat at a small table in the corner. My hands were shaking. How could he do this? How could the little boy who used to cry when he accidentally stepped on an ant grow into a man who would use his own mother as a weapon? I thought back over the years. The signs had always been there. His need to win at all costs, whether it was a board game as a child or a business deal as an adult. His tendency to see people as assets or obstacles. I had always told myself it was just his ambition, his drive. I had made excuses for him, but I couldn't make excuses for this. This was a moral line that could not be uncrossed. I sat there for over an hour, the coffee growing cold in its cup. My initial shock began to curdle into a slow, burning anger. A feeling of resolve started to form in the pit of my stomach. He had underestimated me. He saw me as a simple, sentimental old woman who could be easily managed and manipulated. He thought he could buy my compliance with a fancy apartment and some new furniture. He was wrong. He had started a war, but he had mistaken his enemy. I was not his pawn. And I would not let him do this to Sarah and my grandchildren. I paid for my coffee and walked out into the afternoon sun, my purpose clear. I was going to find out exactly what he was planning, and then I was going to burn his plans to the ground. He had given me a gift, all right. He had given me the weapon I would use to stop him. The condo was in my name. That was his first and biggest mistake. The next day, I started to put the pieces together. I knew I couldn't confront Mark directly. He would lie, he would gaslight me, and he would find another way to execute his plan. I needed proof. I needed to understand the full scope of his intentions before I made my move. My mind went back to the day he gave me the key. He had been carrying a sleek leather briefcase. In his rush to present his grand gift, he had left it on my coffee table and had to come back for it later that evening. It was possible he had left something behind. I started in my living room, searching with a meticulousness that would have surprised my son. I looked under the cushions of the sofa, behind the books on the shelf, in the small drawer of the end table. At first, I found nothing. Just dust bunnies and a few old magazines. I was about to give up when I noticed a small, black flash drive tucked deep into the side pocket of my armchair, the very chair I had been sitting in when he came back for his briefcase. It must have fallen out. My heart hammered against my ribs. This could be it. I took the flash drive to my old desktop computer, my hands trembling slightly as I plugged it in. A single folder appeared on the screen, labeled simply Project Nightingale, Nightingale. A bird known for its beautiful song, but also a bird that sings in the dark. The name itself felt sinister. I clicked on the folder. It contained a handful of documents. The first was a detailed floor plan of the condo, with specific annotations. One arrow pointed from the main window towards Sarah's house with the note, "Optimal line of sight. Unobstructed view of backyard and rear windows." Another document was a schedule. It was a rotation, listing dates and times next to initials. P.I.M./W/F, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. M.L. T/TH for p.m. to 12 a.m. P. I had to stand for private investigator. M.L. were my son's initials. Mark Lawrence. He was planning on taking shifts himself. The most damning document, however, was a draft of a legal brief. It was a motion to modify the existing custody agreement. It was filled with legal jargon, but the intent was horrifyingly clear. The strategy was to build a case that Sarah was an unfit mother by documenting her every move. The brief outlined potential angles of attack: monitor for male guests staying overnight, document any consumption of alcohol, even a single glass of wine in the evening, record times children are left with babysitters, note any signs of household disrepair or yard neglect. It was a blueprint for psychological warfare. He was planning to twist every normal, human activity into evidence of her failure as a parent. And then I saw the paragraph that made my stomach turn. The primary observation post will be the apartment at 123, Glass Street, Unit 17B. The apartment is the residence of the plaintiff's mother, Helen Lawrence, who is supportive of the plaintiff's efforts to secure a more stable environment for her grandchildren. Her presence will provide a natural and unsuspicious cover for the ongoing observation. I was not just the warden. I was the alibi, the supportive grandmother, the concerned matriarch. He had written me into his disgusting script without my knowledge or consent. He had cast me as a villain in the story of my own family. The anger I had felt before was nothing compared to the cold, hard fury that now settled in my heart. This was not just an attack on Sarah. It was a profound betrayal of me. He had used my love for my grandchildren as a weapon against their mother, and my love for him as a shield for his own cruelty. I copied all the files from the flash drive onto my computer, and then deleted them from the drive itself. I tucked the flash drive back into my purse. This was the proof I needed. This was the ammunition. Now, I had to be smart. I had to be patient. I had to let him think his plan was working perfectly. That evening, Mark called, his voice oozing with false concern. "Mom, are you okay? You've been quiet today. Are you feeling overwhelmed by the move?" I took a deep breath and summoned the performance of a lifetime. "Oh, Mark, I'm just a little tired. It's a big change, you know. But I want to see the condo again today. The view really is something special." I made my voice sound a little frail, a little wistful. "I told you you'd love it," he said, the satisfaction in his voice palpable. He thought he had me. "The movers are all set for Monday. I'll come by and help you get organized this weekend." "That would be lovely, dear," I said. "Thank you for taking such good care of your old mom." "Anything for you, Mom," he said. "Anything at all." I hung up the phone and stared at my reflection in the dark screen. The woman looking back at me was someone I barely recognized. She was not the gentle, conflict-avoidant mother Mark thought he knew. She was a woman who had just been handed a declaration of war, and she was going to fight back. My son had no idea who he was dealing with. He had built his empire on predicting outcomes and managing assets. But a mother's love and a mother's rage were variables he had never bothered to factor into his calculations. The first person I needed to talk to was my sister, Mary. She was a no-nonsense retired schoolteacher who had always seen right through Mark's polished exterior. I needed a sanity check. I needed someone to confirm that I wasn't the one who was crazy, that my son's actions were as monstrous as they felt. I invited her over for tea the next afternoon. I laid it all out for her. The key, the condo, the view, the flash drive. I showed her the documents I had printed from the Project Nightingale folder. She read them in silence, her expression growing harder with each page. When she finished, she took off her reading glasses and set them down on the table with a sharp click. "That boy," she said, her voice low and tight with anger. "I always knew he had a core of selfishness, Helen. But this is evil. This is calculated, premeditated cruelty. He thinks it's a gift," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "He called me ungrateful when I hesitated." "Ungrateful?" Mary scoffed. "He tried to turn you into a spy. He tried to make you complicit in destroying that poor girl's life. Gratitude has nothing to do with it. This is about decency. It's about right and wrong." Her words were a balm on my wounded soul. I wasn't overreacting. This was as bad as I thought it was. "What do I do, Mary? If I confront him, he'll just deny it. He'll say I'm misinterpreting things. He'll twist it all around." "You're right," she said, her gaze sharp and focused. "You can't fight him on his terms. He's a master of manipulation. You have to fight him on your terms." She tapped a finger on the printed copy of the deed. "This is in your name, you said? Free and clear?" "Yes," I confirmed. He made a big show of it. Said he wanted no strings attached. A slow smile spread across my sister's face. "Well, then, it seems to me that your ungrateful, manipulative son has made a very, very big mistake. The property is yours, Helen. That means you get to decide what happens to it. He gave you the perfect weapon. He just doesn't know it yet." We spent the rest of the afternoon brainstorming. We talked through every angle, every possibility. Mary's practical, logical mind was a perfect counterbalance to my emotional turmoil. She helped me see the path forward not as an act of revenge, but as an act of justice. An act of protection for Sarah and the children. By the time she left, I had a plan. It was audacious. It was risky. But it was the only way. My next step was to talk to Sarah. This was the most delicate part of the plan. I couldn't just call her and unload this whole sordid story on her. She was already fragile, already living under the constant stress of Mark's post-divorce bullying. I had to approach it carefully, to gather information without causing her more alarm than necessary. I needed to understand what her life was really like from her perspective. I called her on a Tuesday morning, using the pretense of wanting to arrange a day to see the grandkids. Her voice was tired when she answered. "Helen, hi," she said. "It's good to hear from you." "You too, dear," I said, trying to keep my voice light and casual. "How are things? How are Leo and Mia?" "The kids are good," she said, a hint of warmth entering her voice. "Leo just lost his first tooth. He's very proud. Things are okay. We're managing." That word, managing, told me everything I needed to know. It was the word people use when things are decidedly not okay. "Is Mark behaving himself?" I asked, phrasing it as a mother-in-law's casual inquiry. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When she finally spoke, her voice was strained. "He's being Mark, Helen. You know how he is. He's filed another motion to reduce his child support payments. He claims his business is struggling, which is a laugh. And he's always around. I see his car driving down our street sometimes. It's like he's checking up on me." My heart ached for her. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. You shouldn't have to live like that." "It's okay," she said, though her voice cracked. "I'm used to it. I just want the kids to be happy. That's all that matters. I knew I couldn't tell her about the condo. Not yet. It would terrify her. But I had confirmed what I suspected. He was already harassing her. The condo was just the next, more extreme phase of his campaign. I ended the call after making plans to take the kids to the park that weekend. Hanging up, my resolve hardened into something akin to steel. Sarah didn't need another problem. She needed a lifeline. And I was in a unique position to give her one. The final piece of my own investigation was to test Mark himself. I needed to see how he would react to a small pushback. I needed to hear the lies from his own mouth. I called him that evening. "Mark, honey, I've been thinking about the condo," I began, my voice carefully measured. "Great, Mom. It's about time," he said, a note of impatience in his tone. "It's a lovely place, it really is," I said. "But I was wondering why that building specifically. It's so far from my friends, from the grocery store I like." I was probing, testing his defenses. He laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "Mom, it's the best building in the city. The security is top-notch. The amenities are fantastic. I wanted the best for you. Don't overthink it." "It's just the view," I said, letting the word hang in the air. "It looks directly over Sarah's neighborhood. It feels a little strange, don't you think?" His tone changed instantly. The false warmth vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp edge. "What are you implying, Mom? Are you saying I did something wrong? After I spent a fortune to give you a beautiful new home, you're looking for problems? Is this about Sarah? Are you taking her side again?" It was classic Mark. Deflect, attack, and induce guilt. He was trying to make me feel ashamed for even asking the question. "Of course not, dear," I said, backtracking just enough to keep him from getting truly suspicious. "It was just an observation. I'm an old woman. I notice these things. I'm sure it's just a coincidence." "It is a coincidence," he snapped. "It was the only unit available with a corner view. End of story. Honestly, Mom, I expected a little more gratitude. I'm starting to regret this whole thing." The threat was clear. Be grateful, or I'll take it away. But he couldn't take it away. It was in my name. He had already played his hand. "You're right, Mark. I'm sorry," I said, forcing apology into my voice. "I'm just being silly. It's a wonderful gift. Thank you." "You're welcome," he said, his voice still cold. "The movers are coming on Monday at 9. Be ready." He hung up without saying goodbye. I put the phone down, my heart pounding. The conversation had been terrifying, but it had given me exactly what I needed. He was defensive. He was jumpy. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he was already on guard against anyone figuring it out. His story about it being the only unit available was a blatant lie, one I could easily disprove with a quick search on a real estate website. There were 3 other similar units for sale in that same building. None of them, however, had a direct line of sight to Sarah's house. The inconsistencies were piling up. The lies were becoming more transparent. He was so caught up in his own cleverness that he couldn't see the holes in his story. He saw me as a passive object to be moved and managed, not as a person with her own mind and her own conscience. That arrogance was the chink in his armor. It was the weakness I was going to exploit. The weekend was tense. Mark came over on Saturday, ostensibly to help me pack. In reality, he was there to supervise, to make sure I was complying with his plan. He walked through my house with a critical eye, pointing at things he deemed unworthy of moving to his pristine condo. "You don't need this old thing," he said, nudging my beloved armchair with his expensive shoe. "I'll buy you a new one. Something modern." "I like this one," I said quietly. "Your father gave it to me." He sighed, a long, theatrical sound of exasperation. "Mom, we have to let go of the past. We're moving forward. Upgrading. This is an upgrade for you." He spent the afternoon putting books into boxes, his movements efficient and impersonal. He was not packing memories, he was processing inventory. At one point, while I was in the kitchen making us some lemonade, I saw him standing by my desk, looking at my computer. A jolt of fear went through me. Had I left the files I copied from the flash drive visible on the desktop? I rushed back into the living room, my heart in my throat. Everything okay, Mark? I asked, trying to sound casual. He turned, a slight frown on his face.
Yeah, fine.
Just noticing how slow this old computer is. I should get you a new laptop. Something faster. He was probing, checking to see if I had been up to anything. I had been careful to bury the files deep within a folder labeled knitting patterns he would never think to look there. This old thing works just fine for my emails and recipes, I said with a smile. He didn't push it, but the incident left me shaken. He was suspicious. Not of the whole plan being discovered, but of my complete and total obedience. He was a micromanager by nature, and he was getting antsy that he couldn't control my every thought. This only strengthened my resolve. I had to act quickly before he found a way to tighten his grip even further. On Sunday, I took Leo and Mia to the park as planned. Watching them play, their laughter echoing in the clear afternoon air, I felt a fierce, protective love that solidified my purpose. They were the reason I was doing this. They deserved a mother who wasn't constantly under siege, a childhood free from their father's toxic games. When I dropped them back at Sarah's house, she invited me in for a cup of tea.
She looked exhausted.
There were dark circles under her eyes. Are you sure you're okay, Sarah? I asked gently as we sat at her small kitchen table. She finally broke down. The tears she had been holding back began to fall freely. No, Helen, I'm not okay, she confessed, her voice thick with emotion. He's trying to take the children from me. I know it. He's building some kind of case. My lawyer said he's been subpoenaing my financial records, my phone records. He's trying to find anything he can use to paint me as a bad mother. I'm so scared I'm going to lose them. I reached across the table and took her hand. You will not lose them, I said, my voice firm with a conviction that surprised even myself. You are a wonderful mother. I will not let him do this to you. She looked at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of hope and confusion. But what can you do? He has all the money, all the power. He thinks he does, I said. But he's made some mistakes. Just trust me, Sarah. Help is coming. Just hold on a little longer. I couldn't tell her more, not yet. But seeing her pain, her raw fear, erased any lingering doubt I might have had. My son had crossed a line from which there was no return. He was actively trying to destroy the mother of his children, to orphan them in a way, for his own selfish need to win. It was unforgivable. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind a whirlwind of plans and counterplans. The movers were coming in the morning. Mark expected me to pack up my life and move into his sterile watchtower, to become the smiling, compliant grandmother in his twisted narrative. He expected me to sit at that big window and watch Sarah's life unravel. But I had a different plan. Around 3 a.m, I got out of bed. I went to my desk and turned on my computer. I opened the folder labeled Knitting Patterns and found the files I had hidden. I attached them to a new email. It was an email to my sister, Mary, with the subject line. Just in case, I wrote a short message. Mary, if anything happens to me, or if you don't hear from me for a few days, open these and call this number. I included the contact information for a lawyer friend of hers, a woman who specialized in elder abuse and financial exploitation. It was a dark thought, but Mark was ruthless. I had to have a contingency plan. Then, I opened my web browser and went to the real estate website I had looked at before. I found the contact information for the top-rated agent in the downtown area. Her name was Carol. Her profile picture showed a woman with a kind, professional smile. I wrote down her number. I sat there for a long time, the glow of the monitor illuminating the dark room.
This was the point of no return.
Once I made that call, the dominoes would start to fall. I thought of Mark as a little boy, how he would hold my hand so tightly when we crossed the street. Where had that boy gone? How had his heart grown so hard? A part of me grieved for the son I had lost, the man he could have been. But that grief could not be allowed to paralyze me. It had to be fuel. I picked up the phone. It was too early to call, of course, but I could leave a message. My hand was steady. My voice, when I spoke into the voicemail system, was clear and calm. Hello, Carol. My name is Helen Lawrence. I have a condo downtown that I need to sell. It's Unit 17B at 123, Glass Street. I'd like to list it immediately.
And I needed to sell fast.
I hung up the phone. The first domino had fallen. The movers would arrive in a few hours. I would have to deal with them, to put on a show for Mark. But my secret rebellion had begun. He thought he was moving me into a prison of his own design. He had no idea I was already tunneling my way out. The movers arrived at 9 o'clock sharp, just as Mark had said they would. They were a team of 4 big men in matching uniforms, efficient and impersonal. I met them at the door and directed them to the boxes Mark had packed. I felt like an actor in a play, going through the motions of a life that was no longer mine. I offered them coffee, which they politely declined. They worked quickly, emptying my living room in less than an hour. Mark called at 10. How's it going, Mom? Are they there yet? They're here, I said, watching as they carried out my sofa. They're very professional. Good. I told them to handle everything with care, he said. I'll be over around lunchtime to check on things. We should be all moved into the new place by tonight. Okay, dear, I said. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. I had a very small window of time. As soon as I hung up with Mark, my phone rang again. It was an unfamiliar number. I answered it, my breath catching in my throat. Hello, is this Helen Lawrence? A cheerful voice asked. This is Carol from Downtown Realty. I got your message. Yes, hello, Carol, I said, moving into the kitchen for a bit of privacy. You said you wanted to sell your condo at 123 Glass Street, and you wanted to do it fast, she said. I can certainly help with that. It's a prime location. Units in that building don't stay on the market for long. Is there a reason for the urgency? I had prepared for this question. It was a gift from my son. I explained, my voice steady. But my circumstances have changed suddenly. I need to liquidate the asset as quickly as possible. I'm willing to price it competitively to ensure a quick sale. I understand completely, Carol said, her voice warm and reassuring. I can draw up the listing agreement this morning. Can you meet me at the condo in, say, an hour? We can sign the paperwork and I can get the photographer scheduled for this afternoon. An hour is perfect, I said. I'll see you then. I had my excuse ready for the moving crew. I told them I needed to run to the new condo to measure for curtains. They just nodded and kept working. I grabbed my purse, which contained the deed and all the other necessary documents, and left my house as it was being dismantled around me. Driving downtown, I felt a strange sense of calm. The decision had been made. Now it was just a matter of execution. Meeting Carol was a relief. She was just as professional and kind in person as she had seemed on the phone. She had the paperwork ready. As I signed the documents, listing my son's extravagant gift for sale, I felt a surge of power. For years, I had been on the receiving end of Mark's decisions. Now I was making my own. With his pricing, I expect we'll have offers within the week, Carol said optimistically as she gathered the signed papers. Maybe even sooner. The market is very hot right now for properties like this. Sooner is better, I said. I left the condo and drove to a library a few towns over, a place where Mark would never think to look for me. I spent the rest of the day there, reading and trying to quiet my racing mind. I ignored the frantic calls from Mark, which started around 1 o'clock. I knew he would have arrived at my house to find me gone. I turned my phone to silent and let the calls go to voicemail. I listened to them later. The first one was annoyed. The second was angry. The third was furious. Mom, where are you? The movers are almost done, and you're not here. Call me back immediately. This is not funny. I didn't call him back. I needed this time. I needed this distance. That evening, I checked into a small, inexpensive motel. I paid in cash. I needed to be off Mark's grid. He was used to being able to track people, to know their movements. My sudden disappearance, however brief, would unsettle him. It was a small act of defiance, a way of showing him and myself that I was no longer under his control. The next morning, I called him. I knew I had to. "Where have you been?" he yelled before I could even say hello. "I was about to file a missing persons report. The movers finished. All your stuff is in the condo. I had to let them in myself." "What is wrong with you?" I let him vent, his anger washing over me. When he finally paused to take a breath, I spoke, my voice calm and quiet. "I'm sorry to have worried you, Mark. I just needed some time to myself. I was feeling overwhelmed. I stayed with a friend last night. It was a lie, but a necessary one." "A friend? What friend?" he demanded.
Why didn't you tell me?
"Why didn't you answer your phone?" "I needed some peace, Mark," I said. "This is a big change. You have to understand that I was using his own logic against him, the idea of the frail, emotional old woman. It was a role I was beginning to find useful." He grumbled, but my explanation seemed to placate him slightly. The idea that I was just being emotional and not defiant fit his narrative.
Fine, he huffed.
"Well, you can have all the peace you want in your new luxury condo. When are you coming home?" The question was loaded. He didn't mean my little house. He meant his condo. "I'll be there this afternoon," I said. I spent the morning with my lawyer friend, the one whose number I had given my sister. Her name was Susan. I explained the situation, leaving out the most damning details about the surveillance for now, and focused on the condo itself. "He gave it to you as a gift. The deed is in your name, and there are no other names or liens on the title," she asked, peering at the documents I'd brought. "That's right," I said. "Then it's your property, Helen," she confirmed. "You can sell it, you can rent it, you can paint it purple if you want to. He has no legal claim to it whatsoever. His emotional claim, however, is another story. You need to be prepared for him to be very, very angry." "I'm counting on it," I said. True to her word, Carol called me that afternoon, just as I was driving towards the city. "You are not going to believe this," she said, her voice buzzing with excitement. "We have an offer, a cash offer, for the full asking price." My heart leaped. "Already?" "I told you it was a hot property," she said. "They're a young couple, relocating for a job. They want to close as soon as possible. Like, within the week."
Can you do that?
"Yes," I said, a wide smile spreading across my face. "Yes, I can." Everything was falling into place, faster than I could have possibly imagined. I walked into the condo that afternoon feeling lighter than I had in years. The place was filled with my furniture, arranged awkwardly in the sterile space. It looked as out of place as I felt. Mark was there, pacing in the living room. "There you are," he said, his arms crossed over his chest. I was starting to worry again. "I'm here," I said, setting my purse down on the kitchen counter. "It's a lot to take in. All my old things in this new place." "You'll get used to it," he said dismissively. He walked over to the large window and looked out.
See?
"Isn't this better? A fresh start. And look at that view." He gestured towards Sarah's house. "You can even keep an eye on the grandkids for me." He said it so casually, so smoothly, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. He was testing me, seeing if I would take the bait. 2 days ago, I would have flinched. But now, I was armed with knowledge. I knew his game. "That will be nice," I said, my voice as smooth as his. I walked over to stand beside him, looking out the window at the home of the woman he was trying to destroy. I felt a pang of guilt for the deception, but it was quickly overshadowed by the rightness of my cause. I was not just protecting Sarah. I was protecting my grandchildren from a father who saw them as possessions to be won in a game. He put his arm around my shoulders. "See, Mom? I told you this was for the best. We're a team. We have to look out for each other." The hypocrisy of his words was breathtaking. A team. He thought I was on his team. I leaned into his touch for a moment, playing the part of the dutiful mother. But inside, I was a revolutionary, plotting the downfall of a tyrant. He had no idea that the woman standing next to him, his greatest ally in his mind, had already signed the order for his fortress to be sold to the highest bidder. The next few days were going to be very interesting indeed. The closing was scheduled for Friday. 3 days away. I spent the time living in the condo, a stranger in my own life. I slept in a bed that wasn't mine, surrounded by my familiar things, which looked alien in this cold, modern box. I was a spy in my own home, or rather, the home Mark had assigned to me. Every moment was an act. I made breakfast in the sleek, minimalist kitchen. I sat on the uncomfortable gray sofa and pretended to watch television. And I waited. Mark called, every day, checking in. His calls had a new purpose now. He wasn't just asking about my comfort. He was fishing for information. "See anything interesting out the window today, Mom?" he asked on Wednesday, his voice a little too casual. "Oh, just the usual," I said, feigning disinterest. "Birds, traffic, a mail truck." "What about at Sarah's place?" "The kids playing in the yard," he pressed. "I saw them for a little while this morning," I said. "They looked like they were having fun on the swing set." I deliberately kept my observations bland and positive. I was not going to give him a single piece of ammunition. "Right," he said, a note of frustration in his voice. He was expecting detailed reports, juicy tidbits of gossip he could twist into legal filings. I was giving him nothing. "Well, keep your eyes open. You never know what you might see." "I will, dear," I said sweetly. On Thursday, the day before the closing, he pushed harder. "Mom, I need you to do something for me," he said, his voice low and conspiratorial. "My lawyer says it would be really helpful if we had a log. A detailed log of who comes and goes from Sarah's house, especially any men who aren't me." This was it. The direct order. He was no longer hinting. He was instructing his operative. I took a deep breath. "A log, Mark? I don't know. That feels wrong. It feels like spying." I had to feign reluctance, not outright refusal. I needed him to believe I was still malleable, just a little hesitant. He sighed, the sound of a patient man dealing with a simple-minded subordinate. "Mom, it's not spying. It's protecting your grandchildren. Sarah can be reckless. We need to make sure she's creating a safe environment for them. This is for Leo and Mia. Don't you want what's best for them?" He was using the children, my love for them, as a tool of manipulation. It was his favorite tactic. It was also his most disgusting. "Of course I do," I said, my voice trembling slightly. This part wasn't an act. The rage I felt was very real.
Okay, Mark.
I'll try." "Good," he said, the satisfaction returning to his voice. "Just a simple notebook. Date, time, description. Nothing complicated. You can do that for your grandchildren, can't you?" "Yes, Mark," I whispered. "I can do that." After I hung up the phone, I walked over to the window. I looked down at Sarah's little blue house. The lights were on. I could see the silhouette of someone in the kitchen, probably Sarah, making dinner for the kids. She was down there, living her life, completely unaware of the cold, calculating eyes that were meant to be watching her from above, documenting her every move, searching for a mistake, a moment of weakness. I opened a drawer in the kitchen and took out a brand new notebook and a pen, just as he had instructed. I sat down at the table and wrote on the first page. Date: Thursday. Time: 7:15 p.m. Observation: a good mother is making dinner for her children. Then I closed the notebook. It was the only entry I would ever make. The next morning, I met Carol at the title company's office. The closing was a simple affair. I signed a mountain of paperwork. The young couple who bought the condo were there, bright-eyed and excited about their new home. They told me how much they loved the view. I smiled and said I was glad it was going to a good family. I did not tell them that the view had been curated for a much darker purpose. When it was all over, the title agent handed me a check. It was a cashier's check, made out to me, for a staggering amount of money. The proceeds from the sale, minus Carol's commission and closing costs. I held it in my hand, the paper cool and heavy. It felt like a trophy. It felt like justice. I deposited the check into my savings account. The bank teller's eyes widened when she saw the amount. I asked her to issue me a new cashier's check for the full amount, but this time, I had her make it out to Sarah. Now, it was time for the final act. Confrontation. I needed to do it in person. I called Mark. "Mark," I said, my voice even. I need to see you. Can you meet me at the condo in an hour? The condo?
Sure, Mom.
Is everything okay? Did you see something? He asked, his interest immediately piqued.
We just need to talk, I said.
I'll see you in an hour. I hung up before he could ask any more questions. I drove back to the condo one last time. My furniture was still there, a silent testament to the life I had briefly pretended to live. The new owners wouldn't be moving in until the following week. I had the keys until then. I sat on the sofa, the check for Sarah tucked safely in my purse, and I waited. My heart was calm. My purpose was clear. I was no longer afraid of my son. He arrived exactly an hour later, letting himself in with his own key. He was smiling, expectant. He thought I was about to deliver the first installment of his surveillance report. So, he said, rubbing his hands together. What's the big news? Did Mr. Just a Friend from yoga class stay the night? I stood up to face him. I did not smile. We need to talk about this condo, Mark. His smile faltered. What about it? Is there a leak? Did the dishwasher break? I'm not going to live here, I said. The words came out, simple and direct. There was no room for misinterpretation. He stared at me, his brow furrowed in confusion. Then he laughed, a short, sharp bark. What are you talking about? Of course you're living here. All your stuff is here. We just moved you in. You moved my things here. I corrected him. I never agreed to move. I am not going to be your spy. The air in the room changes. It grows thick, heavy with unspoken things. His face hardens, the charming facade melting away to reveal the cold, hard man beneath.
He takes a step toward me.
I stand my ground. My spy, he says, his voice dangerously low. Mom, what are you talking about? I bought you a home. A beautiful, safe home. And this is the thanks I get? You're being paranoid. You're being ungrateful. Here it is. The gaslighting. The guilt. But it doesn't work on me anymore. I know the truth. I'm not being paranoid, Mark, I say. My voice is steady. I am in control now. I know about Project Nightingale. His face goes pale. It is the first time in a very long time I have seen him truly shocked. He is speechless. He has no script for this. He has been exposed. I know about the private investigator. I continue, pressing my advantage. I know about the schedule. I know you were planning to sit in this very room, at this very window, and watch the mother of your children like she was a bug under a microscope. I know you plan to use me as your alibi. The supportive grandmother, don't you dare talk to me about gratitude. He opens his mouth, then closes it again. He looks like a fish gasping for air. How could you possibly know that? He stammers. You're careless, Mark, I say. You're so used to people doing what you want that you've become arrogant. You left your plans on a flash drive at my house. He collapses onto the sofa, his head in his hands. He is not remorseful. He is just angry that he got caught. You've ruined it, he mutters. You've ruined everything. No, I say, my voice ringing with clarity. You tried to ruin a good woman's life. You tried to use your own mother to do it. I didn't ruin anything. I stopped it. He looks up at me, and the shock in his eyes has been replaced by pure, unadulterated fury. This is the real Mark. The one Sarah had to live with for 10 years. This is my condo, he screams, his voice echoing in the empty room. I paid for it. You will do as you're told. No, Mark, I say calmly. This is where you are wrong. I reach into my purse and pull out a piece of paper. It's a copy of the sale agreement. I toss it onto the coffee table in front of him. It was my condo. The deed was in my name. And I sold it. The closing was this morning. He stares at the paper, then at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. You what? He whispers. I sold the condo, Mark. I repeat. It belongs to a very nice young couple now. They move in next week. He lunges to his feet, his face contorted with rage. You can't do that. I'll sue you. I'll have you declared incompetent. I'll take every penny back. You can't, I say, my voice as cold as ice. Because I have copies of everything, Mark. The surveillance schedule. The draft legal brief outlining your plan to use me as a cover. The emails between you and your lawyer discussing your strategy to harass Sarah. I have it all. And if you try to come after me, I will send it to Sarah's lawyer. I will send it to the judge in your custody case. I will send it to every news outlet in the city. They'd love to hear about the millionaire philanthropist who uses his elderly mother to spy on his ex-wife. How do you think that would look on the cover of Forbes magazine? He freezes. The threats die on his lips. He is trapped. For the first time in his adult life, he does not have the upper hand. He has no move left to make. He has been checkmated by his mother. I pick up my purse and walk toward the door. I pause with my hand on the knob and look back at him. He is just standing there in the middle of the room, surrounded by my furniture, a king in a castle that is no longer his. He looks small. The movers will be back on Monday, I say. They'll take my things back to my house. I suggest you are not here when they arrive. Then I walk out the door, leaving him alone in the silent, empty monument to his own cruelty. I do not look back. The first call I made was to Sarah. I asked if I could come over. She sounded worried, but agreed. When I arrived, I found her sitting at her kitchen table, a cup of untouched tea in front of her. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Helen, what is it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Is it Mark? Have you heard something?" I sat down across from her and reached into my purse. I pulled out the cashier's check and slid it across the table. She looked down at it, her eyes scanning the paper. She saw her name. She saw the amount. Her eyes widened in disbelief. What is this?" she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "It's a fresh start," I said gently. "It's a new life, free from him. It's a security deposit on a new apartment in a different state if you want. It's a college fund for the kids. It's whatever you need it to be. But most of all, it's a gift. No strings attached." Tears began to stream down her face. "But where did this come from? I don't understand." And so I told her. I told her everything. About the condo, the view, the flash drive, the surveillance plans. I told her how Mark had tried to use me, and how I had turned his weapon back on him. As I spoke, the fear in her eyes was slowly replaced by a look of profound, overwhelming relief. The weight she had been carrying for years was finally beginning to lift. When I finished, she was sobbing, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude, of release. She stood up and came around the table, wrapping me in a fierce hug. "You saved me," she cried into my shoulder. "You saved my children. I can never, ever repay you." "You don't have to," I said, hugging her back tightly. "You are family, and we protect our family." We sat together for another hour, talking and planning. For the first time, she spoke about the future with hope instead of fear. She talked about moving closer to her own family, about starting a small business, about giving Leo and Mia a childhood that was peaceful and happy. The check was not just money, it was freedom. It was a future my son had tried to steal from her, and I had just handed it back. As I was leaving, she stopped me at the door. "Helen," she said, her eyes shining. "Thank you. You gave me back my life." I just smiled. "You are strong enough to live it all along," I said. "You just needed the battlefield to be level." The second call, the one I had been dreading but knew was necessary, was with Mark. He called me the next day. His voice was not angry anymore. It was cold, dead, and empty. "The movers are here," he said, his tone flat. "They're taking your things out of the condo." "Good," I said. There was a long silence. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. "Why did you do it, Mom?" he finally asked. It was a genuine question. He truly did not understand. In his world of transactions and leverage, an act of principle, of love, was a foreign concept. "Because it was the right thing to do, Mark," I said. "Because you were hurting people I love. You were hurting your own children by trying to destroy their mother." "She turned you against me," he muttered. "No, Mark," I said, my voice firm. "You did this. This was all you. Your choices. Your cruelty. You became a man I no longer recognize. A man I can no longer have in my life." "So that's it?" he asked, a hint of his old arrogance returning. "You're cutting me off? Your only son. You need to get help, Mark," I said, my voice softening for a moment. "You need to find a way to let go of this anger and this need to control everyone. Until you do that, we have nothing to say to each other. Do not call me. Do not come to my house. And do not, under any circumstances, try to interfere in Sarah's life again. Because those files are still safe. And I will use them if I have to. Do you understand me?" He didn't answer. He just hung up the phone. It was not the ending I would have wanted for my relationship with my son. But it was the one he had earned. The final conversation was with my sister, Mary. I went to her house that evening. I told her the whole story, from the sale of the condo to the final phone call with Mark. She listened patiently, a small smile on her face. "Well, she said when I had finished. "You really did it. You took on the big, bad wolf, and you won." "It doesn't feel like winning," I confessed. "I've lost my son." Mary reached over and patted my hand. "Helen, you lost that version of your son a long time ago. You just finally stopped pretending you hadn't. What you did was brave. You stood up for what was right, even when it was the hardest thing in the world to do. You should be proud of that." "I am," I admitted. "I'm proud that I didn't let him use me. I'm proud that Sarah and the kids are safe now." "Exactly," she said. "You chose your real family. The one that's built on love and respect, not on money and control." I spent that night in my own bed, in my own house. My furniture was back where it belonged. The familiar comfort of my home wrapped around me like a warm blanket. It was a little cluttered, a little worn, but it was mine. It was real. The next few weeks were quiet. I didn't hear from Mark. I spoke to Sarah regularly. She had already found a new place to live, a small house in a quiet town just an hour away from her parents. She sounded happier, lighter, than I had heard her in years. Leo and Mia were excited about their new school. They were free. One afternoon, a letter arrived in the mail. It was from a law firm. My heart seized for a moment, thinking Mark had found a new way to attack. But it wasn't from his lawyers. It was from Sarah's. Inside was a short note. "Helen, I wanted you to see this. Thank you for everything. Love, Sarah." Attached was a copy of a court filing. It was a motion from Mark, formally withdrawing all pending litigation regarding custody and child support. He was giving up. The threat of exposure had been enough. He knew he had lost. I folded the letter and put it away. It was over. Truly over. My son, the millionaire who thought his money could buy him anything, had finally come up against something he could not purchase, could not bully, and could not control: his mother's conscience. He thought his gift of a condo would buy him a window into Sarah's life. Instead, it had bought her a door to a new one. And it had taught him a lesson that I hoped someday he might finally understand. He learned that his money couldn't buy him everything. It couldn't even buy him a view.